Our next one, you've got another clean sweep here, but with a pretty tight margin there from Instagram. So 60% are taking Oregon State with 40% taking Florida. Florida is one of those teams that started the season pretty hot. They had that tight game with Utah that they ended up coming out on top, and Utah was a top-ranked team coming into the season. A big thing that's going to be working against them in this one is that their quarterback, Anthony Richardson, top talent in all of college football, is declared for the draft and won't be playing with the team. On top of that, they've actually also lost their backup quarterback. He was dismissed from the team a short time ago for some you can look up why he was dismissed if you'd like. I won't repeat it
Nefarious
here.
activities.
Yeah, nothing to make light of, but yeah, definitely not something you see every day in college football. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see who they roll out there at quarterback. Definitely not going to be anyone who's had significant snaps this season. And then on top of that, you've got Oregon State who's humming. I mean, they've played at a high level all season long.
Yeah, this one is a game where I think picking Florida would be very, very disrespectful to an Oregon State team that's had a really solid year and seems to be building. But this Florida team, there's a lot of talent on that roster, and there is always going to be a lot of talent on a Florida Gators roster. But without their top two quarterbacks, it's just going to be really tough, I think, for them to get this win. And then, side note, you made me think of that with those two quarterbacks out. I know you've been looking at the transfer portal for these quarterbacks. Florida's got to look like a pretty promising spot now with the top two guys out of the way at Florida.
Yeah, definitely, and they've been linked to a handful of folks as well. I'm not sure what they have coming in the way of recruiting classes, but yeah, I know that Sam Hartman's been one of the names that's been consistently tagged to Florida, especially now with Anthony Richardson heading off to the NFL. I think you'll start to see more of that churn and those headlines tracking. Last couple notes on Oregon State. Like I mentioned before, they're not historically great team, so having the opportunity here to get to a 10-win season would be huge for them. And then it's always fun for me seeing some of the other Power 5 conferences star running backs get a chance to go up against a front seven from an SEC team. Damian Martinez over there at Oregon State's had a great early career. He's still got a long way to go there at Oregon State, but it'll be fun to watch how he can stack up against the big dogs, I guess you could say.
Yeah, that Florida defense. I watched the Florida State game, and nobody really wanted to play a ton of defense that game, but there's some absolute freaks up front for that Florida defense front seven. They have some dudes that are very quick and will pop off the screen when you're sitting there watching.
Yeah, they always seem to, and it survived multiple coaching staffs too. It must just be something in the water down there in Florida, but the recruits that they get from the state of Florida, yeah, they get some genetic freaks out there. Just moving on, so we've got the mouthful of a bowl game, the Jimmy Kimmel LA Bowl presented by Stifel. And I have to be honest, I couldn't tell you what Stifel is. I do know who Jimmy Kimmel is, so we're 50-50 on that one. But this should be an interesting game. There's a couple teams that like to air the ball out. We've got a clean sweep of Fresno State picks. Some of that might have to do with our Mountain West allegiance, being that I am an Air Force grad and running New Age Sports. Some of my network, I guess, leans a little bit Mountain West, but this one definitely has the makings of being a really good game.
Yeah, I like Fresno over this year and the last couple of years. They've been a really physical football team, and from some personal experience, I know Mike Leach is gone, so it's not exactly the same build for this Washington State team, but that physicality from Fresno, I really like that in this game, and I think they can take advantage of Washington State in that category.
Yeah, you mentioned the physicality of Fresno. Just watching them in the eye test, right? You watch some of their games. They won the Mountain West this year for the first time in quite a while, I think since back in the Derek Carr days, if anybody can remember back to then. But, yeah, Jake Hayner's been a starter there for a few years now. He's gotten a lot of history behind him, a lot of legacy built there at Fresno. Potentially looking at, see where he ends up. He may be guy that enters the draft this year and one of those late round quarterbacks. The other guy we've got highlighted here in the middle, that's Jalen Moreno Cropper. But these guys, I mean, you watch Fresno State play, and they just don't seem like Mountain West recruits. They look like they belong somewhere bigger. I don't know if that speaks to the coaching staff, which I think has now moved on, that would have recruited those two. But yeah, super physical. From Washington State's perspective, you kind of hinted to it earlier. Ever since Mike Leach left, and unfortunately he passed away this week. So condolences to his family and all of those involved at the programs he was at, most notably Mississippi State recently. But yeah, they've had a little bit of a adjustment period. I think they're starting to move in the right direction here. They actually picked up Cameron Ward, this quarterback, who's pictured here. He's a phenomenal talent. He's a transfer from Incarnate Word, where he lit the world on fire down there in Texas and FCS football. So getting him up to play at a high level. And he put up numbers this year too. So, I mean, he threw for almost
3,100 yards.
Yes, and only 8 picks. So really promising future for him. A lot of people thought he may come out for the draft this year. He said he's going to come back for one more to Pullman. So we'll be excited to see him take on Jake Haener and have kind of a quarterback battle here. But then also in the future will be fun to watch.
Yeah, Jake Haener's only thrown 3 interceptions this year, so they take care of the ball over there at Fresno. I think that's going to play big in this game with a 1,000-yard plus running back and a 1,000-yard plus receiver. I think they're going to get it done.
All right, the Holiday Bowl, which is played out in San Diego. We got a clean sweep here. Oregon taking it. 78% of our Instagram followers are choosing Oregon. One big storyline to watch, Drake May and North Carolina's struggled to end the season, but around week 8, week 9, he was considered a Heisman Trophy candidate as a freshman. So definitely a fun quarterback matchup here between Bo Nix and Drake May. Drake May will have the upper hand in one facet of the fact that Christian Gonzalez, the potential first-round pick out of Oregon, is declared for the draft and won't be playing in this game. But on the other hand, his top receiver, Josh Downs at North Carolina, is also choosing that same route. So sort of offset each other there, but you have to imagine there's some more talent in the wide receiver room for Drake May to work with. On Oregon side of things, though, you've got Bo Nix, who's lost his offensive coordinator, Kenny Dillingham, the guy that got him to Oregon. He will be returning for next year, I believe, unless I've misread something. But word on the street is that Bo Nix is going to be back, and without Kenny Dillingham this time. But I would expect the offense to be business as usual. UNC's defense gives a lot of room for attacking downfield. So I expect to see Bo Nix doing some things on the ground and through the air.
Yeah, I largely just had to go with Oregon here because their offense has been solid, and UNC's defense has been pretty abysmal this year, which I hate to say, having a former coach who I do like on that staff, but they just haven't been good defensively, and it's been a little too much for Drake May to overcome. And honestly, coming down the stretch, some of those struggles, right? When you have to score that many points, you can start to force things, especially as a young quarterback. And then also, you can see this in college football a lot. Young guys will come out and not really know any better, and they play really well, and then can struggle there towards the end of the year, just trying to do too much or knowing a little bit too much. I mean, you saw with Bo Nix at Auburn. It came out really strong and kind of lost it there. But yeah, I just have to give the edge to Oregon, just solely based on UNC's defensive woes.
Yeah, I like this matchup a lot, though. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Next one, you got the Alamo Bowl, and I really like this matchup. You've got Texas taking on Washington State. I actually like Texas, or excuse me, not Washington State, Washington. I actually like Texas in this one. You saw early on in the season, Texas at full strength with Quinn Ewers under center. They took Alabama down to the wire. Obviously, Alabama didn't end up being the undisputed #1 team that we probably all thought that they would be, but obviously a very strong team nonetheless. And then just down the stretch, Texas, in the face of some adversity, was able to put up some big numbers and take some really tough teams down to the wire, regardless. On the other side, though, you've got Michael Penix Jr., who was arguably a Heisman candidate himself. If he had seen more team success, I think he would have seen more of his names included in those conversations. So a really fun quarterback battle between these two, and I think it'll be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, interestingly thought that Michael Penix Jr. Move in the transfer portal from Indiana was interesting. I saw it. Um, Maybe this is just me with a little Big Ten bias. I saw it a fairly lateral move, but obviously he's taken advantage, and it's been more than that. And he's been able to elevate, especially the last few games, elevate on a national stage. I waffled back and forth on this one because I do like Texas a lot with Quinn Ewers at quarterback. I think just from the first couple plays we saw him against Alabama, you were able to say, "Oh man, Texas has a guy again." But I went with Washington because I like what Michael Penix brings to the game. He's mobile. He's going to lay out for some yards as we've seen in bowl games in the past. Um, I just think I think I gave them the Washington the edge for that reason. I can't be understated though. Bijan Robinson in the backfield for Texas uh, is probably the consensus number one running back in this year's draft. And I don't know if it's that close with anybody else really. So that'll be tough. But I just leaning with Washington here from the quarterback play perspective.
Yeah, definitely something that Texas is going to have to look to supplement elsewhere as they've lost Bijan Robinson and Roshan Johnson likely won't be playing in this game, both their top two running backs. So something they'll have
Oh
to
yeah,
find somewhere else to get that production out of. The Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl. You've got Pittsburgh and UCLA. I like this matchup a lot, actually. Israel Abanikanda is the star there for Pitt, a 1,000-yard rusher himself. They do everything on the ground. Keaton Slovis has re-entered the transfer portal. He came to Pittsburgh through the transfer portal this season, but has re-entered. They're going to get Phil Dracovic, the Boston College quarterback, but he won't be there, obviously, for this bowl game. So that'll be a factor to watch. And then you've got UCLA, who had a fantastic season, was in the Pac-12 championship hunt right up to the very end. Dorian Thompson-Robinson finally put it all together this season. Was one of the nation's best quarterbacks. So I like UCLA in this one. I think they're a more complete team, especially with Pitt kind of having a couple holes in the roster due to the transfer portal and some injuries, whereas UCLA is more at full strength.
yeah. I'll be brief on this one. I just think Chip Kelly's got this program kind of back, if you would say, at UCLA. And DTR's had a finally, as you said, put it all together. He has had some flashes early in his career, but this season he truly came into his own a little bit. So I think this is UCLA all the way.
Yeah, and we've got a consensus from the Instagram followers on this one as well, 100% saying UCLA is going to win. Cotton Bowl. This is an interesting one. You get the Group of Five team in that gets to play in the BCS Bowl every year. You could make the argument that although Tulane had a historical season, one of the weaker Group of Five teams that have found their way into one of these games. They
I
have a
don't
few.
think we have to sugarcoat it. They might be the weakest Group of Five team to make it into one of these games. They have 3 losses this year.
I think that's right.
Yeah. And they're playing against a USC team. Uh, every the big guys are playing for USC, correct? Caleb Williams is still too young to leave.
Caleb Williams is injured, but is tracking to play.
Okay.
Jordan Addison, I'm not sure, the receiver, and
Yeah.
then Tupelo too on the defensive line as well. I'm not 100% sure. I believe he's playing as well.
Okay. I mean, I just think the talent level, even if USC is missing a few of their top guys, is going to be too much for Tulane. I think this is going to be part of the issue. I'm a proponent for a bigger playoff, but when we go to 12 teams, I think we're going to have a few of these games like this because both of these teams would have been in, and Tulane probably would have been 12th and playing Georgia, close to it. And it's just not going to go well for them this year, I don't think.
Yeah, I agree. And not to mention that USC had their playoff chances ended on a sour note. So being able to get a chance to come beat up on sort of lesser talented and lesser athletically gifted team. I think they're going to put the pedal down, and Lincoln Riley's going to be out to prove something. And then believe capping us off, this will be the last one we talk about today, is the Rose Bowl game, and I think we've got a pretty good matchup on our hands with Penn State taking on Utah.
Yeah, I like this one a lot. I kind of waffled on this one, because honestly, I haven't seen like Penn State's been like a little up and down, or just kind of quiet, I guess maybe not necessarily as up and down, but just a little quiet this year. And then Utah obviously starting the year off really hot against uh, Florida, down at Florida. Just kind of, I don't want to say let off the gas a little bit. They just didn't have the gas left to finish the year in some big spots. And I like Penn State going into this one.
Yeah, and I like Penn State in this one too, and that's nothing against Utah. Utah is a super accomplished team. They obviously went out and won the Pac-12 and knocked USC out of the playoff. Cam Rising, the quarterback there, is a phenomenal player, and then Clark Phillips leading the defense. I believe finished with the most interceptions in college football, or at least had that at one point. I like Penn State here because it's a young, hungry team. Towards the end of the season, freshman quarterback Drew Aller got the call. They let him come up and finish the season. They finished with 4 wins. They've got Abdul Carter on the defensive side of the ball, and then a pair of 2 young running backs too, led by Nick Singleton. And this is going to be a lot of their first exposure to a big bowl game like this in the Rose Bowl. So I just think you're going to get their best. Utah came in with some big aspirations this season, and they finished strong, but I don't quite think that they probably are where they wanted to be. So I just don't think that you're going to see the same level of composure and passion in the Utah team as you will for Penn State.
I think this game too, for the fans out there, I think this is a big game for non-playoff bowl games. The Rose Bowl itself, especially with it still being a Pac-12 team and a Big Ten team, like there's a lot of pride still on the table, I think, for both of these schools, especially their fan bases, especially for a school like Utah, who hasn't been in as many of them lately. Obviously, last year, but um, just getting the chance to get over the hump, I think, for Utah and win one of these, and then eventually keep that rolling if they can. But Penn State, I think, will definitely be ready to play and make a statement, because I think James Franklin too will be looking to posture as we go forward for both recruiting and himself to another school potentially.
Yeah, and we'll continue to see some of those recruits play out and see Penn State, a young team, continue to develop those stars that they have. And I'm excited to see what they look like in 2 years.